Summer exhaustion has a way of making you question everything you built. You're covering callouts, managing chaos, and somewhere around the third week of June, you start wondering if this was a terrible idea. You've pushed through before, but this year it might hit a little differently. And the usual pep talk, well, it's not landing. Here is what confident early childhood operators understand. When summer makes you question your why, it's a signal that you might have drifted from the vision that started all of this. But when you reconnect with your specific, your written, your personal why, it doesn't make summer easier for sure, but it really reminds you why it's worth it. And that is going to change everything about how you lead through a chaotic time. Well, hey there, CEOs. Welcome to the Early Childhood Business Made Easy podcast. I'm Kelly Peak, your host. I'm here to help you find more of that time, freedom, and profit you so deserve. Now, my friends, it's mid-June. And after handling some call-outs, maybe talking a parent off the ledge about some sort of change, and answering 17 messages all in one day, you finally get a moment to sit down with your coffee. Finally. And your mind, it goes quiet, maybe for about 45 seconds if you're lucky. And in that quiet, this thought might float up. I don't know if I can keep doing this. Now, that's not in a dramatic, I'm walking away type of a thought, but just a quiet, exhausted wondering. I know I've been there. Like maybe you're looking at the business from the outside for a moment and asking, honestly, is this all worth it? Believe me, I have felt that before. And I want you to hear something important before we go any further. That feeling, my friend, it is not weakness. It's not burnout from a clinical sense. It's not evidence that you made a wrong choice or that something is fundamentally broken. It's just a drift. And a drift is something entirely different from failure because drift, well, that has a direction. It means you just moved away from something, which always means you can move back towards it. Now, here's what I've learned after 30 years in this industry. The operators who hit mid-June, hit that mid-June wall really hard, they're almost always never the ones who have it the hardest. They're just the ones who lost sight of why it was all worth it in the first place. And that is a very different problem with a very different solution. Now, the solution, it's not a new strategy. It's not a better schedule. It's not a different staffing model or a pep talk from a business coach. The solution is so simple. It's just returning to your why with a specific, layered, personal why that drove you from the very beginning, why you wanted to do this in the first place. With enough clarity and precision that it can actually function as a compass on those hard and chaotic days. So today we're going to talk about three things. Number one, how to recognize when you've drifted away from your why. Number two, how to rebuild it with the specificity it needs to actually guide you. And number three, make decisions from your vision instead of your exhaustion. And don't forget about your free resource. I have that at kellypeak.com where you're going to find information about podcast episode number 186. It's the Finding Your Why Clarity tool. Download it and use that as we go along with today's episode. Now, don't let summer have you questioning everything. Your why doesn't need summer to be easy. It just needs it to be visible. The early childhood operators who lead through summer with clarity and conviction, well, they aren't the ones who never feel exhausted. They're just the ones who wrote down what they were building, why they were doing it, and they did all of that before the exhaustion arrived so that when it does arrive, and it will, they can think through it. That operator burnout in the summer, that is really not always because things are super hard. It's just the ones who really lost their connection to why and why it's worth it. And that matters because it changes the solution entirely. If burnout were all about workload, then the answer would be doing less. But if it's about disconnection from purpose, well, then the answer is reconnection. And reconnection doesn't require a lighter schedule. It just requires a clear vision. I have watched operators with genuinely crushing summers, super enrolled, great teams, lead through them with grace because they knew exactly what they were building and why it mattered. I've also watched operators with manageable summers fall apart because the invisible thread between their daily work and their original dream, well, it had frayed to almost nothing. The work didn't really change. It was just that connection to the work that did. Now, the research on this, it's striking. A report from the National Association for the Education of Young Children found that early childhood educators cite lack of sense of purpose and meaning as a primary driver of turnover and burnout, ranking above even compensation in some surveys. And the McCormick Center for Early Childhood Leadership, well, they documented that leaders in EC businesses who have a clearly articulated written personal mission statement, well, they report significantly lower burnout indicators than those who operate without one. Now, what this tells us is that purpose, it is not a soft concept. It is a functional leadership tool. And when it's present and visible, it works. When it exists only as a vague feeling, that erodes under pressure. And no season applies more pressure to that erosion than summer. Now, there's a preschool director that I worked with that had been on the edge of walking away from her business for 3 summers in a row. Not because the business was failing, enrollment was actually strong, but because she had stopped feeling anything about it. She told me she could describe everything the business was doing, but really couldn't remember anymore why she cared. When we worked through her layered why together, something opened. Her personal why turned out to be strikingly specific. She wanted to operate a business that led her to be home by 4 p.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays so she could coach her daughter's soccer team. She hadn't been able to coach in years, and the business she built gave her that freedom, but it had slowly started to consume it. Seeing that on paper changed everything about how she made her decisions. Within 1 summer of leading from her written why and reminding her of what she truly wanted, she had restructured those Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. She was coaching her daughter's season, and she described her business for the first time in years as something that she was proud of rather than something she was just surviving. She didn't change her enrollment numbers or her team structure. She just changed her relationship to why she was showing up, and that changed her actions. Her actions were more inspired towards her why. Now, this is available to you as well, my friend. So I want to go over those 3 CEO strategies that will help you get to your why as well. So strategy number 1, recognize the summer drift. Now, the drift I'm talking about, it's not dramatic. It's not a big dramatic moment. It's gradual. It happens over weeks and a couple months, so slowly that you often don't notice it until you're standing in the middle of June or July, wondering how you got here. In summer, the drift accelerates because the season is almost entirely reactive. You're covering call-outs, managing parent concerns about schedule changes, and navigating the practical realities of a different operational season. So the strategic thinking, the visioning, the why am I building this conversations you had with yourselves in September about the school year, well, those have been crowded out by this urgent need of action during this busy season. Now, the most reliable way to recognize whether you've drifted is to pay attention to how you're describing your business to yourself. Not what you're telling families in a tour, not your mission statement, but your internal story, the one running in your head when you're alone and exhausted at the end of the week. A CEO connected to her why describes her business in terms of what it creates. So, for example, I built this so families in this community have access to a genuinely high quality early childhood experience. Or maybe I'm building toward a business that generates enough profit for me to be home on Wednesday afternoons. Now, there's something forward facing in the language, something about direction and purpose. An operator who has drifted describes her business in terms of what it costs. So something like, this business takes everything I have, or I can't keep up, or I don't know how much longer I can do this. That language is backward facing, and the only thing visible is the weight that she's carrying on her shoulders. So 3 other specific signals of drift worth naming. First, you've started avoiding the strategic work that you used to love. So maybe it's curriculum planning, team development conversations, the marketing strategy you actually found energizing in January. Those things now feel like extra weight instead of the real work of leadership. Second, you're making most of your decisions from the question, what is the fastest way to make this problem stop? Rather than the question, what does my vision require of me here? And third, you've stopped telling your story. When you're connected to your why, you talk about it naturally. When you've drifted, it feels a little irrelevant or even maybe kind of embarrassing. None of this, again, is a character flaw. This is just a signal. And the Finding Your Why Clarity tool, which I want you to go grab at kellypeak.com, where you'll find information about podcast episode 186, that begins with a drift inventory specifically designed to help you identify how far you've traveled from your original vision and from what. So 2 action steps here. Number 1, Write it down in one sentence, how you are currently describing your business to yourself. Not your pitch, not your mission statement, but the real internal story. Then find something you wrote or said about your business when you were just starting out. Maybe a journal entry, an email, a note to yourself, maybe your marketing strategy at the very beginning when you were starting out, and then compare the two. The gap between them, that is your drift map. Action step number 2, identify one decision you made in the last 2 weeks from depletion, from exhaustion, rather than clarity. Not to judge it, but I just want you to start recognizing the pattern. Depleted, exhausted decisions, well, they prioritize stopping pain over building something. So I want you to name it, I want you to write it down, and then I want you to set it aside. The most important thing here is recognition, and that's the beginning of changing the pattern. CEO strategy number 2, you're going to return to your why. So most early childhood operators, well, they have a why. They just haven't written it down enough specifically for it to be useful when things get hard. Something like, I do this to make a difference in children is a why, but it's not really specific enough to guide decisions, sustain energy through a brutal August, or maybe help you figure out whether a particular struggle is even worth it. So what you need is what I called a layered why. Now, this is a version that is personal enough to feel like it's yours and specific enough to actually function as a compass. So the Finding Your Why Clarity tool, that walks you through 3 layers. I want you to walk through them here before you open the tool. So the first layer is your personal why. This is about your own life, not your business's mission. So when you imagine this business working in the way that you intended, what did your personal life look like? What were you able to do that you couldn't do before? What were you able to stop doing? So for the director that I told you about, her personal why was coaching on Tuesday and Thursday, coaching soccer. That's specific, that's measurable. And when summer decisions threatened to pull her away from it, she had something concrete to measure the cost against. So this first layer is often the most emotional, and it's the most powerful when summer gets hard, because when August makes you question everything, the question, is this still moving me toward the personal life that I want? Well, that cuts through a lot of the noise in a way that just a plain mission statement really rarely can. Now, that second layer is your professional why. This is about the work itself and the specific impact you're building, not to make a difference in children, but particularly in the community, in a particular approach that maybe only your business takes. Your professional why is what makes your business irreplaceable to the families you serve. So when you're connected to it, you lead with conviction. When you've drifted from it, you start looking at competitors and wondering if they figured out things that maybe you haven't yet. And your third layer, well, that's your legacy why. This is the longest view. When this business is done, what have you built? What will be different? What will your team members say about what it meant to work with you? What will families whose children move through your doors carry with them into the rest of their lives? Now, legacy whys are easy to dismiss because they are very abstract, but I have found the opposite. When summer makes everything feel meaningless, it's that legacy layer that is often what gives context to some of the hardest things. So that Finding Your Why Clarity tool has structured prompts for all 3 layers and a framework for distilling them into one sentence that a tired, overwhelmed version of you on your worst day, well, you could read that and feel grounded again. So don't forget, go download that at kellypeak.com. Your 2 action steps here. Action step number 1, before you open the tool, write down your current why in whatever form it exists in your head. Give yourself 5 minutes. Don't edit it. Just write it. This is a starting point, and it's important because it shows you what's already there and where you're going to build from rather than staring at a blank page. Okay, action step number 2, work through the 3-layer framework in that Finding Your Why Clarity tool and distill your layered why into one sentence, not a paragraph, just one sentence specific enough that the most depleted version of you could read it, maybe on a really, really crazy day in August, and you can still feel grounded. Write it somewhere where you will see it every day for the rest of the summer. Okay, on to CEO strategy number 3, lead from vision, not exhaustion. Now, having a clear written why, that is step 1. The harder work is actually leading from it when you're exhausted and every decision feels like one more thing you don't have the bandwidth for. So leading from vision, that means asking a different question before you make decisions. So most operators in summer, they default to some version of what's the fastest way to make this problem go away. And that question is understandable. Sometimes it's necessary, but if it becomes your primary decision-making framework, you're going to find yourself making decisions that relieve present pain at the cost of your future vision. So a vision-led decision that asks, does this move me toward or away from the life and business I'm building? Now, let me give you 3 concrete summer examples that look different when filtered through that question. So the question of whether to hire a part-time summer intern, maybe part-time coverage, is usually framed as a budget question, something like, can I afford it? But a CEO leading from vision frames it differently. If I cover these shifts myself instead of hiring, what happens to the strategic work I intended to do during the summer? Is the money I save worth the cost to the direction I'm building toward? That's a very different question, and it usually has a very different answer. Now, the question of whether to take a week off in August is usually framed as a logistical question. Who would manage everything? Well, a vision-led CEO asks, what is the cost to my purpose, my leadership, and my personal why of not taking that week? What kind of leader will I be in September if I rest versus push through? What kind of leader will I be next year if I know I've sacrificed my own family summer memories and my time? Now, the question of whether to start fall enrollment planning now or wait until September, that's another question that usually gets framed as a capacity question. I just really don't have time right now. But a vision-led CEO asks, what does my why require of me here? I built this to serve families in my community with high-quality early childhood experiences. What does delaying that planning do to my ability to fulfill that commitment? So none of these questions are comfortable. They're not meant to be. They require you to measure decisions against something bigger than that immediate relief of getting through the day. But they are the questions of a CEO, not a director, not just a manager. Remember, a CEO leads their business. A director or manager just merely manages it. This is also where that Time+Freedom lifestyle, our profit planning reset bundle, this becomes a practical tool rather than just an aspiration. Because vision without a plan, well, that just becomes hope. The reset bundle is designed for early childhood operators who need to reconnect their financial planning to that personal why and make sure the business they're building is actually generating the time and the profit their vision requires. So that's available at kellypeak.com, where you're going to go find shop resources. And I recommend working through it before the fall enrollment sessions begin. Your why deserves a financial plan that actually supports it. Okay, action step number 1 here. Write down one decision you're currently avoiding, or maybe you're delaying in your business, and then ask yourself, if I were leading from my why instead from exhaustion, how would I approach this decision? Write down the vision-led version of your answer, even if you're not ready to act on it yet. The act of writing it down is the beginning of closing the gap between where you are and where your vision wants to take you. Remember, we are rewriting the rules of business. And yes, a little time investment is required, but that payoff in the end, that is going to take you farther than you ever imagined. Okay, action step number 2, visit kellypeak.com. Go check out that profit planning reset bundle and spend 5 minutes reviewing the Time+Freedom lifestyle planning bundle, and ask yourself honestly, is my current financial plan actually aligned with my Time+Freedom lifestyle and what my why requires? If the answer is no, that alignment work is the most important thing you can do for your summer recovery and your fall momentum. Now, those 3 strategies that we talked about today, recognizing the summer drift, returning to your layered why, and leading from vision instead of exhaustion, they are the difference between operators who survive the summer and operators who grow and lead through it. So start with recognition. Write down your internal story and compare it to where you started, and then spend some time finding your why clarity tool to really ensure your why has specificity, and it needs to function as a compass, not just as inspiration. So check that out. And then make one decision this week from your vision instead of being depleted and exhausted. Just one. See what that feels like. So again, don't forget the Finding Your Why Clarity tool. It's free. It's waiting for you at kellypeak.com. Now, if you're ready to make sure your financial plan actually supports the life your why is pointing toward, don't forget the Time+Freedom Lifestyle Profit Planning Reset Bundle. It's exactly what you need. kellypeak.com, shop resources. Now, you did not build this business because you wanted an easier life. You built it because you really wanted to make a difference in the lives of others, for the children, for the families, for everyone you serve, but also, and most importantly, for your own family too. That belief is still true. It maybe is just being buried under a hard summer, but dig it out, write it down, lead from it. You've got this, my friend. Take care, and I'll see you next week.